Welcome back to Data Center News Asia. You're part of the midweek content dump as we catch up from our travels to PTC. Fittingly, we've got news stories from Japan and Australia, and you've also just come back from Japan, James.
Yes, I have. Not in a data center context, though. Not in a data center context. But yeah, keen to dive into what we missed over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, all right, the first one I wanted to cover, this is one that we featured this story in various guises. So you may recall there is a big Sharp factory that makes LCD screens in one of the Tokyo prefectures. I've lost the actual location of it. So this was acquired initially by SoftBank, who then partnered with KDDI, and now KDDI have actually opened the facility and they've got customers moving in racks. And this is pretty incredible because we were talking about this, some of the transaction parts of the story 6-7 months ago. I mean, James, think about that, 6-7 months to get a facility online with customers moved in Japan. Pretty miraculous stuff, and I think a pretty interesting case study for this style of conversion facility.
Yeah, it's something we're seeing, kind of seeing more of, I suppose, in Japan as some of their legacy manufacturing base kind of loses its competitiveness for a variety of different reasons, but that's creating opportunities for some of the data center operators. So yeah, when I saw this story, I was pretty surprised at how quickly they've managed to do it. But yeah, it does seem that like if they're not already, workloads will be running relatively soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have to be looking at opportunities and facilities like this and go, wow, okay, this is a huge, already advanced kind of MEP HVAC equipped facility that presumably has highly redundant power options. And I guess anything that might be missing from a big factory like this to become a data center can be much more quickly procured and set up than going through Japan's notoriously challenging development process.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how similar projects, like, because I think there's a couple of them down in Osaka in particular, which we've highlighted or mentioned over the last couple of years. And I know people are increasingly looking at these kind of retrofit style developments, not only in Japan but in a couple of other, particularly the advanced economies across the region. So yeah, it'd be interesting to dive more into this. I will be in Japan next week, and this is definitely one on the agenda to go check out.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one that popped up here that I saw, this is not a facility I was hugely familiar with, but iNet have launched a data center in Yokohama. This is a pretty small one. It's like 100 racks for 600 kilowatts. But again, it was another sort of facility conversion, and they're kind of decommissioning a factory and putting some stuff into it. So yeah, just kind of more of the same. I think people have to find a way to circumvent this sort of 5-6 year uh, RFS date that we're seeing on some of these new Japan new builds people are putting up.
Yeah, well, like I kind of originally when I read this, I thought it was a bit of a non-story, or certainly not a kind of a headline hyperscale size story that we're generally reporting on. But what was, I think, interesting and kind of worth highlighting is they had a existing data center capacity, so obviously a legacy DC facility, which they closed. They chose to close down rather than try and retrofit, even though they've kind of done a kind of a retrofit of sorts, which I don't know, maybe just highlights the challenge in retrofitting existing, particularly older, 2 decades plus kind of facilities. That it's possible, but very difficult to do. And in some cases, similar buildings, which aren't purposely built data centers, may actually be more suitable for these kind of brownfield style developments.
Yeah, well, I suppose with the scale changes we've got now, an LCD factory has more similarities to a new data center than does an old data center from 10 years ago, which looks more like a server cabinet in the back of someone's office. Um, Interesting stories from Australia as well. These are still on the sort of theme of big new AI campuses, but these are all new builds. So NEXTDC have got the approval for this is Mel's another company's naming convention that we don't mention. M4. M4, this is their fourth site in Melbourne, and this will be their biggest as well. I think this is a 2 billion Aussie dollar investment that they've touted here.
Biggest,
Biggest in Melbourne, I think. Sorry.
uh, not Need to double check. Anyway, significant development, 150 megawatts. This is the Todd Road site. So this has been on our radar for quite a while, obviously, but good to see that it's finally announced. Interesting again, talked about it already in another story, but interesting to read the press release, the NEXTDC press release about this, because this isn't a data center as per NEXTDC. It's a development with 3 core facilities. So they mention AI factory, a mission critical operations center, and then also a tech center of excellence. So it's quite a lot of interesting stuff in the press release, actually talking about their use of grey water, for example, and some of the other initiatives, which I think is part of their plan or their strategy to kind of make this development more palatable to maybe some of the folks who, like I said, aren't particularly pro data center developments at the moment.
Yeah, this isn't just a data center, it's critical infrastructure for Australia's AI future. I'm not sure whether Craig talks like ChatGPT or ChatGPT talks like Craig. Art imitating life, I guess, would be. But the other one from actually partners of NEXTDC, SHARON AI. So the first story here is probably a bit of a non-news story, or at least I'm sure Mr. James Manning wasn't surprised by his promotion to CEO. He's one of the co-founders of the business. There's been a bit of a shuffle around in the leadership of SHARON AI. Congratulations, nonetheless, on his appointment. But yes, so the previous CEO has moved over to be the US head, where they're obviously expanding pretty aggressively into that market. And then, so that's Mr. Wolf Schubert, and James Manning has moved over to the CEO job. So congrats. But the bigger SHARON AI story was that they have received debt funding from USD.AI, which is, when you look on their website, it's kind of like a sort of crypto storage that invests into AI facilities. But yeah, I mean, that's always the big challenge for these type of companies, is the bankability and the loaning. So I thought this debt story was quite an interesting one and a good news story for the SHARON AI guys.
Yeah, linked obviously to NEXTDC, because we reported, I don't know, 3-4 months ago about them potentially taking significant amount of capacity with NEXTDC in M2 or M3. I can't remember which one it was, but that was subject to obviously getting financing. So yeah, they've now got a debt facility of 500 million, and apparently they're going to be taking the first chunk of that, so about US 65 million this quarter, in fact. So it could also be a win for NEXTDC, because it looks like they are their preferred kind of colo partner.
Yeah, and again, just a reminder of how crazy the numbers we're talking. Thinking back to our interview with Jonathan, that 500 million loan will get you about as far as enough GPUs to fill probably 10 megawatts of that capacity they're using with NextDC. So huge amounts of money we're talking about here with these neo cloud businesses. There's another one from Australia as well. This is this is another Melbourne one, actually. This was the 𝐜𝐵 one. I thought this is quite interesting. So they've been I know they've been talking to you guys for a long period of time about Australia expansion. They've got that one site in Sydney already that they've had for a little while. This is the can't remember the name of what's the name of their capital DC site in Sydney. Anyway, they've now got this Melbourne one that's opened that they are officially announcing, and it looks like a biggie.
Yeah, so there's talk of a $10 billion investment from 𝐜𝐵 into which the Trobe City Council have seemingly welcomed. So this is interesting, because this is a somewhat similar to the case in Japan we just mentioned a few moments ago, where in this instance there's a nearby power station. Well, there's a nearby power station, but there's also a coal plant relatively nearby, which employs can't remember the exact number, but a pretty significant amount of people, and that supports a lot of jobs in the area, which is going to close down. So I think how 𝐜𝐵 have seemingly positioned it as basically a regenerative project in advance of anything happening. But yeah, it looks like going to be, well, plans are for obviously a significant campus-style development. They've rented the land off the Lightwood Group. And so this is one, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one moves.
Yeah, so this was the Hazelwood power station. It was interesting for people to see here the scale of some of these old coal power plants. So this one used to be a 1.6 gigawatt power plant when it was up. It was built in the 70s, and so it was made up of 8 200 megawatt units. I'm not sure exactly what portion of the site 𝐸𝐻 owns. Or I do know that there's been a few people bidding, and there's been a lot of activity around that sort of development. But yes, I don't know how that translates into the 700 odd megawatts that 𝐸𝐻 are touted to build here. But yeah, definitely a urban redevelopment story and a new use for the old venerable coal plant there.
Yeah, I think.
Uh,
Sorry, I read it as it being beside a existing coal plant, and then there was another one that was being retired. Is it the same one?
so I think the Hazelwood facility is already been retired. But I'm not sure. They still have some power production on there. I haven't looked. I don't know whether that's like a different type. Well, it's a smaller one, but yeah, that facility's been decommissioned a few years ago, 2017, I think.
Okay, but okay, and I think there actually is another power plant nearby in that case, if I'm not mistaken. So that was my reading of the article, but I'll do some more digging.
Last one here. I know we're not really fiber center news, but there was a couple that popped up. So 𝐸𝐸, Bevan Slattery's startup's the wrong term because they're building multiple large cables across the ocean. But this was posted up from the NEXTDC website or from the NEXTDC's LinkedIn page. So 𝐸𝐸 have announced a new cable coming from San Diego via Hawaii and Fiji into Sydney. And then they've already got this will connect to the cable that they have that goes from Sydney round the coast, Melbourne, Adelaide, onto Perth. And so, yeah, Australia looking to really beef up its kind of high speed connection between these big data center hubs. And I think they're hoping to stay firmly in the lead for Asia's AI capacity in the future.
Yeah, nothing really to add to that one, I'm afraid.
Nice one. All right. Well, I think that covers us for the week. Don't forget the newsletter is coming back on. So if you're not subscribed, do. And if you want to watch the full video episodes, we've got, as I say, a series coming up from PTC, and we'll be doing a few more. We've got a few CEOs lined up for some interesting chats in Singapore. We'll be getting deep into those conversations, and that's available on our YouTube, Spotify, and DCNewsAsia.com.
Great. Thanks, Reese. Thanks everyone for watching.